Okay, here we go with our housekeeping item. You hear all my clicking because I'm trying to adjust my screen. Okay, today our session is in Zoom webinar. That means that all attendees are muted and your videos are off. We are recording the session and it will be available soon. I will drop the link in the chat box here in a minute. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen for questions. We should have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. American Sign Language interpreters will be on screen throughout the session. You may change your view at the top portion of your screen. Also, we are using transcriptioning services today. If you do not see that on your screen, click the CC button at the bottom. We know that there may be technical difficulties, so we appreciate your patience as we encounter any today. To be eligible for continuing education credit or certificates of attendance, you must be present in the content portion of the webinar for at least 90% of the session to be eligible for a certificate. This is a mandate by the boards. Please do not leave the webinar until the conclusion of the Q&A, as that counts as part of the session. You do not have to enter your contact information in the chat, as attendees and your time is tracked by Zoom. You must register for each session using the same email address and join with the link that was emailed to you. If you receive the link from a friend or a coworker, we will not be able to track your attendance, so you will not be eligible for a certificate. And just a reminder to keep using the same email address to register for each session. That is the unique identifier that we use for tracking continuing education. By the first full week of December, you will receive an email from me that will provide a link to access the session evaluation, then your certificate. This is a screenshot of the landing page for the evaluations and certificates. You must complete the session evaluation to proceed to the certificate. And lastly, you're responsible for printing your own certificates. We don't mail or email those anymore. This website houses several years of the System of Care Academy. So if you lose your certificate, you can visit this website to print another. And now we're going to learn about our presenters. Barb is the Associate Director for Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children, which is a statewide family organization. She has raised 3 generations of youth with behavioral health challenges and received wraparound services, as well as assisted other families in navigating the child serving system. Barb is a certified family and adult peer support specialist, a trainer for Kentucky Strengthening Families, peer support supervision, and coaching outside the box. Our next presenter is Jessica Ware. Jessica is a data support specialist at the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute on the System of Care 5 evaluation team. Jessica earned a Bachelor of Science in Family Studies in 2013, and she spent much of her early career at the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice, working directly with young people and their families. Her experience in the department as a grants administrator and program coordinator for the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative allowed her to explore data as a powerful tool for advocacy. Jessica is a student in the Master of Social Work program at the University of Kentucky. She plans to focus on research, program development, and other aspects of system-level work. Our next presenter is Jon-Michael Watkins. He's also a data support specialist for the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute with a passion for the useful dissemination of data to help improve the lives of others. Jon-Michael earned his bachelor's degree in mathematical economics in 2020 and is currently pursuing a certificate in universal design and his MBA. In his year-and-a-half tenure at HDI, Jon-Michael has been a part of the creation, implementation, and evaluation efforts for over 10 grants that have helped improve the lives of Kentuckians and those in surrounding states. He hopes to leverage his knowledge of data systems and universal design techniques to open community gyms centered around inclusion and accessibility for all. And our next presenter is Malgorzata. I missed it. Mical. She's a data support specialist at the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute who believes in the power of clean data. Fresh out of University of Florida, Max began to work at HDI in 2022 to help create data visualizations and craft reports for various projects. Currently, she is learning project management skills to help keep consistent implementation and usage of methodology, tools, and reporting at the country, regional, and state level. Living in Tennessee, Max likes to travel and hopes to move abroad one day. And now I'm going to turn it over to our presenters.
Thanks, Leah. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
We see the presenter view.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thanks Leah for that great introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our learning series, Amplifying Peer Support with Data Solutions. I'm Jessica Ware. I'm a data support specialist with the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute, and I serve as the project coordinator for KPFC's peer support evaluation. And I'm so excited to have everyone here today to be able to share our work as it relates to peer support here in Kentucky, and hopefully give you some tools and insights into how you might go about creating your own data solutions to amplify your work. I'll let the team go ahead and introduce themselves. Do you want to start, Jon-Michael?
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. Hey, everybody. My name is Jon-Michael Watkins, and I am a data support specialist at the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute. I've been working on this solution development for KPFC with a focus on their data systems.
My name is Max, and and it's pronounced Malgorzata, which is pretty hard, so we have tried our best. And I'm also a solution developer on the KPFC side for the SOC5 grant.
My name is Barbara Greene, and I'm the Associate Director for Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children, and had the blessing to be the partner with UK HDI in actually putting together this particular workforce management system. If you cannot see me, I am the 71-year-old, short, red-headed, long red-haired woman. And what I bring to this is my skills and lived experience and managing peer support.
Thanks, Barb. The first thing I wanted to talk about before we get into creating any kind of solutions or data products is knowing your why. And this is really the first step. Our why within the evaluation unit at the University of Kentucky's Human Development Institute is helping our partners succeed. And we do that through data collection, data analysis, and by helping create data solutions. Our why is directly connected to our partner's why. So I'll let Barb share more about the mission and vision of KPFC and maybe a little bit about her why.
So Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children is a statewide family organization. And as you can see on the slide, our vision is really to assist families and make sure that families of children and youth who are affected by behavioral health challenges have an opportunity to achieve their very fullest potential. And our mission, of course, is to empower those families who are affected by behavioral health challenges to initiate both the personal change and system change that allows them to grow to their potential. So that's kind of who we are. Our why really is about trying to develop a system to manage peer support on a statewide level and to provide evidence and efficacy to those peer support services. So that was kind of our why.
Thank you. So for those of you with us today, I'm curious what drives your purpose in the work that you do. So I know we have very passionate, driven professionals with us here today. So if you feel like sharing this afternoon, go ahead and put your why in the chat, and we'll take a look at some of those. to reduce stigma, to help families. These are great, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing. Supporting families. Veronica, help grow independence, to help the health and well-being of our children. These are wonderful. See, I knew you guys would have some great whys. Dee Dee, thanks for sharing. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So our whys create the what. The what is the work. So what was the problem? Well, the System of Care 5 evaluation team needed peer support data for grant reporting and evaluation, and KPFC didn't have a formal system in place to collect peer support information, which made producing reports time-consuming and difficult. So our goal was to create a system where our evaluation team could access that data without accessing customers' private information. And also, we wanted to create a system that KPFC could use to easily manage their current referrals and grow the system over time. The result was a user-friendly peer support work management system that combines KPFC processes with tools that produce measures for grant reporting without sharing personally identifying information or PII. And the system is owned and managed by KPFC with minimal technical support from HDI. So on the agenda today, first we'll talk about solution development, where we'll look at the tools and techniques you can use to develop your ideas into a solution or product. Next, we'll talk about data-informed decisions, looking at how you can use the data to guide decision-making. Then we'll talk about managing obstacles, where we'll share more about how we identified barriers and how we responded to those. And finally, we'll talk about partnership opportunities and how we use partnership and collaboration to leverage positive outcomes for young people and families receiving peer support. I'll hand it over to Max now to tell us more about solution development.
All right, solution development. So solution development is the process of determining the best way of satisfying requirements that the customer might have. In this case, it was finding the best solution for KPFC that would fit within the tools they already owned. Data that is both accurate and precise is very hard to achieve, but not impossible. There's certain ways you can do that will diminish inaccuracy and imprecision. Efficient product design is one way to accomplish this, although it is a never-ending process, which is something you're going to hear me say throughout this entire presentation. So what's really important to note here is that although for KPFC, we use Smart Sheets system as it is what they already had, but solution development methods that we're going to talk about can be used in any project. In this part of presentation, we are going to go over product design and some of the steps in achieving a system that is not only feasible, but effective for KPFC. And it all began with design thinking. Although I do just want to mention one important key aspect is communication. As you can see from the little comic, without proper communication with the client or partner, things can end up being mistranslated and the results become far from what the partner requested. So design thinking. We employ design thinking methodology to best understand KPFC's needs during solution development. Design thinking is a human-centric, nonlinear, and iterative process that is used to tackle problems that aren't yet defined. It involves 5 main phases, as you can see in the slide, which are ideate, emphasize, define, prototype, and test. Emphasize is setting aside your own assumptions and gaining real insight into what the partner needs and what their needs are. Define is stating your partner's needs and problems. Ideate is identifying different solutions. It's the brainstorming phase. Prototype is pretty self-explanatory. It's the experimental phase. It's creating the solution and making sure the one you created is the best one. And test, which is not the final stage, and it's often used to redefine one or more further problems that can prop up. As you can see, it's a process that is repeated multiple times during development. It's why it's such an infinity symbol, because it's continuous. And there's not really an order to it. You don't really have to go from ideate to prototype. You can go from emphasize to prototype, and you go often back to emphasize. After all, what is the point of developing a solution that our partner might not even use? Design thinking creates a partnership between the partner and the developers. KPFC was involved in almost every aspect of the solution development, actively testing system functionality and offering feedback during every stage of planning, design, and development. The three key words to approach design thinking are feasibility, viability, and desirability. It's asking yourself as a developer, is this feasible? Is this viable? And is this desirable? Which sounds pretty basic, but super important. KPFC took a big leap of trust in working with us to create a smart sheet system, because it might have not worked. It's for their management system. So to make sure that we did not break that trust, we continuously use design thinking, especially emphasize. What aspects of this process stood out to you, Barb?
Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me was that the way we communicated in our partnership around what this should look like, how it should flow, what needed to be included in it. And we done a lot of work, I think, which was really good work around coming to some common understandings about what our goals really were, what we were really trying to accomplish with the system, and also the best ways to get that, and some common language that we established, both as a person who knows minimal about data and data analysts who knew minimal about what I was trying to accomplish with the system. And so I wanted to just say that communication has been, it's been vital. And then the other thing is that I also wanted to say that that this was from the beginning through the continuation, because there is no ending at this point. So from the beginning through the continuation of really looking at what our desired outcome from this instrument would be, and that it was very empowering to be able to talk with someone about, from a human perspective, what we really wanted to have happen, and have that translated into this sort of design thinking and a tool that we could use to manage our goals.
Exactly. Thank you, Barb. And like we say, like technology can only take you far. It's about the people behind it. So going forward, the Agile Vision Canvas is one of the tools we used, and it's a super powerful collaborative tool that is simple yet effective. It works towards establishing a clear product vision by defining valuable insight into the users it will serve, the needs it will meet, the requirements it must have, the goals it will achieve, and the ultimate value it will serve. Through open discussion and in a very short time, the blank canvas comes to life and serves as the guiding light to serve product development. I personally underestimated this tool, but really since then have changed my tune. It's so helpful. It helps drive the solution development. It encompasses 3 phases of the design thinking as well, which is emphasize, define, and ideate, because you're working with your partner to create this. It asks the question of, are we going where we said we wanted to go? What I loved about this tool is that it's really dynamic, it's living. When our project manager met with KPFC, they were able to really hone down on the essentials that KPFC needed. They didn't immediately just fill out each cell one by one. It's not a form. They went back and forth. So for example, you would establish one target group and then move to the needs of that target group, and then what products may best suit that need, and then what goal or value it's fulfilling. So to get more specific, you can see in there that the first target group is individuals making their referral. The needs was for a user-friendly referral process, and that was solved by an online referral form. And it fulfills customer confidentiality, but it works for the other target groups as well, such as agencies that are also referring customers. So we have a picture of a compass on this tool because it serves the same function. It guides the solution development process and helps find alignment. By the end of like the vision canvas session, not only should your team walk away with a solid understanding of the partner, but also a game plan on how to achieve the partner's mission and goals. Also during solution development, it's always really good to look back at this and figure out if goals were met and what future goals to work towards. For HDI, the vision canvas is what we went back to consistently and making sure we were meeting the goals that we set up together with KPFC. For KPFC, I think it helped solidify what they needed. Barb, if you want to expand on how it felt from your end to create this.
Just that one of the things that we really desired was to be able, we thought was important, was to be able to look at the immediate big picture and how things fit together. And really using this kind of a tool kind of allowed us to really link, you know, what our objectives were and how that affected the outcomes and the goals, and more specifically, what were going to be the needs that were going to get us where, and what actual product could be used to do that. So, and it also kind of kept us grounded when we looked at it to the purpose of what we were trying to accomplish. So it was an amazing tool. I didn't see it in this form until we were kind of getting into it, but once I saw it committed to paper, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool to be able to look at all of this at one time. And it's almost like a roadmap for where we wanted to go.
Exactly, I agree. And it helps to put the conversation you're having with your partner onto paper. So it's not just going back and forth, it's actually making sure you're accomplishing things you said you're going to set out to do.
Yeah.
Process mapping. So the best way to sometimes see exactly the process that the partner is going through is process mapping, another project management tool. Process mapping is the graphical representation with illustrated descriptions of how things get done. The goal of process mapping is to understand the primary process steps, roles of process owners, bottlenecks that cause issues such as slowdowns and maybe error in data integrity and other things like that, and to brainstorm on ideas where the process may be improved. So you can see on this picture, there's these like yellow bursts. They're called Kaizen burst, which is the Japanese word for improvement. Kai means good and Zen means change. So they're an event that is in the process that has the specific aim of improvement. It's things where there's bottlenecks that you would do these events in order to get through those bottlenecks. So they tackle the bottlenecks and obstacles, such as the fact that like demographics were not involved in the referral form. So once the event is complete, they can either become, the Kaizen burst can become part of the process, such as an online referral form that makes sure to capture all those demographics, or it can be used to include a whole new setup in the process. This is a continuous tool. There's many versions of this process map. It didn't just start out with, you know, a finished product. You go through a lot of the process steps together. And our team worked with Barb through several stages of the process map to understand the current state as well as to plan out the future state. So this isn't even a final process map. There's definitely going to be probably more involved in the future as more goals are set up. Barb, how did it feel to see a visual of the process that your team was going through?
Well, you know, this slide, it looks sort of busy because you have all these boxes and circles. And you can see that definitely has a small start, which is where we really began that visioning and trying to figure out what we really needed, what we really wanted for our outcome, for the outcome that we desired. But it was interesting. As I look at it now, it looks very sophisticated. For someone who doesn't do a lot of data, this looks very sophisticated. The building of it was not that sophisticated on my end. I think it was more sophisticated for who was assisting me to develop it. And there really was a sort of an experiment and then a continued conversation as, does that get you where you want to go? Or this can get you there, or so on and so forth. So that collaboration really is what built this process mapping. And as I look at it now, I feel rather proud that we were able to come up with something and that it works. It really works very well.
Absolutely. And I mean, none of this process could have happened without Barb already having a process in place. It just helped clean and tweak the little bottlenecks that were happening. Data gathering is happens at the very first step of the entire process, from the vision canvas to the process mapping. You can call that data gathering, and you're continuously gathering data about what your partner might need, and maybe there's data that surprises you that comes up. But for this project, what was incredibly useful was creating a common language. So in this case, it began with the referral form, and it was taking their physical paper copy and creating fields that would be on the online form. And it was creating common words that both data analysts and that Barb could use. And I think, Barb, at the end of this journey, you did become your own data analyst, so which we're incredibly proud at UKHDI. Is there anything you would like to add about data gathering, Barb?
I just want to say again, you can see where common language and coming to some common language was critical in this process that we used. And we learned so much. I mean, when we began this project, we knew we wanted to collect data. We didn't really know how. We didn't even know all the right questions, but through the process that we used with HDI, we were able to find those questions, find a word for, not just what could be used between HDI and KPFC, but also those who were making referrals. And so that common language kind of grew into even our referral sources, which was and continues to be awesome that we can do that.
Agreed. So moving on to prototyping, this process is as simple as it looks, but perhaps the most fun, and it's also never ending. A professor that I once had used to say, a project is never completed, just do. Early stages of solution development focus on quickly viewing data and visualizing ideas to pull feedback from the partner. So it's not about having a perfect complete product, it's answering the questions of feasibility, viability, and desirability, which means working closely with KPFC and communicating with them what worked for them and what needs to be changed. Prototyping is a very low level of investment that yields high value to the development team. In the process, we can always address issues that may come up, but it's also important to note what common problems may be arising and creating quality control checkers that can do the work for you. And in this case, it was with Smartsheet system, and it can have error handling that can help not only the solution developers, but the partners as well. Throughout the process, HDI continuously utilized design thinking, ensuring that we emphasized with our partner and used their feedback to take the next step. So it wasn't just us tinkering with this the entire time. It was going to Barb and saying, is this working? What should we change? And what would you like to see? Anything you'd like to add, Barb?
Just that this was such an empowering process for us as the folks who were going to implement this system. And I would have never beforehand, had I seen all these visuals, I would have been very confused. So it's interesting today. I kind of know what this means. And I'm 71, as I said earlier, and it's been a long journey for me with data, but I've come to respect data. And I honestly actually had a little bit of fun in trying to build this and make it look the way we wanted it to look. So it was an empowering process for us.
I'm so happy to hear that. I think project management tools are incredibly functional. I think sometimes they're painful to start, but once you have them under your belt, they are incredibly helpful, and they can help you in the future projects as well. Yeah. Moving on to the peer support management system itself. So this is just going to go over quickly about the Smartsheet system itself. We're not going to go super in depth into this, but we just wanted to show you several aspects that were created in the Smartsheet system itself. Which could be probably used in any licensing system if you have the correct one. So the entire system was developed in Smartsheet, like I said previously, which was a software that is available, which is what KPFC had a license to. It's also really important to note that personally identifiable information, PII for short, is protected. Only KPFC staff and supervisors have access to it, which is super important. So any information you're going to see from here is fiction, is fictitious. It's not real. I just want to clear that up. And although HDI does receive monthly reports, we do not have any access to the PII, because in Smartsheet system, you can cater different reports to the audience that can take away that information. So, and also when we were creating this, it was really important to keep in the SOC 5 grant requirements, which is what helped us create the analytic dashboards of like which measures should be measured. So the system flow can be divided into 3 stages. The first part is the referral, as you can see, referral received. The second is really those 2 boxes in the middle, specialist assigned and the services provided, and then the customer discharge. And we kind of call this an episode of care, you know, from referral to the discharge. And although this looks kind of simple, it's a really long and painful journey to get here, and the system is much more complex than this, with a lot of reports that are created for different audiences and error handling that ensures nothing is clogging up the pipes and that no referral is being lost. By creating this system, it took like 20 minutes to get a referral, and now it only takes about 2 minutes, and then, you know, to get a specialist assigned, even shorter. So we're going to have 3 different demonstration videos with Michelle Ellington, our Smartsheet master, narrating the entire process. With this, we can glimpse into what the process is for peer support staff themselves. But before that, I just want to go over certain aspects of the system itself. So work management dashboard is used by KPFC supervisors and staff only. So we do not see any PII, private information. It is used to process incoming referral requests, triages referrals, and assigns customers to peer support specialists, as well as ensures that the discharge process is handled correctly. It is essentially the backbone of the entire system. And then the specialists also operate on the same dashboard, but stick with what they need, which is the referral information, making sure they have the correct information, contact information, and it begins their entire episode of care for their customer. And now for the demonstrations. So the first part is going to be the referral form, and we're hoping the audio is correct, but let us know in the chat if you cannot hear it.
The KPFC referral form is available on their website for agencies and individuals to submit a referral to receive peer support services. In this video, we will use a demo form with fictitious information. The referral form captures information on the referral source, for the individual being referred, youth or child involvement, emergency contact information, and other supporting information. The form ensures that all information is supplied to KPFC so that they may provide the best possible care to their customers. Once a new referral form is submitted, KPFC staff are informed by receipt of a system-generated email. At this point, they use their peer support management system to triage customers to receive peer support services. New referrals are indicated by a metric on the dashboard, so that staff may quickly access their information and assign them to the appropriate peer support specialist. KPFC staff views new referral information in a tabular report. This report includes all information provided from the referral form. Colors are used to quickly identify information that needs to be completed by KPFC staff when assigning a referral to a specialist. Information received during the referral process is tracked on the referral dashboard within the management system. This dashboard displays various metrics about the individual and their demographics.
I know she speaks a little quietly, so if need be, I would higher the volume, and I'll try to speak quieter because your volume will be up. But that was the referral process. And then the fun part starts for the specialist, which is specialist assigned, and then the services they provide. So it's the first 2 middle functions, and it's 2 web forms that are included in this. And on cue.
Assigning a new referral to a peer support specialist is a 2-step process. First, KPFC staff completes new referral information, which includes updating a system status field to indicate that the peer support specialist has been assigned. This step triggers two system automations. First, the system generates a personalized email to inform the referral source that the referral has been assigned to a peer support specialist. The system also generates a document that KPFC staff provide to the peer support specialist during assignment. Assignment is finalized with the completion of a new specialist assignment form. Once the form is submitted, the referral is moved into the customer caseload where they may now receive care. Once a referral is in the customer caseload and ready for intake, the peer support specialist attempts contact. The specialist tracks attempted contact using a status field and adds a comment with a date contact was attempted. Once contact is made and a session is scheduled, the specialist updates the status with services being provided. Colors are used on the customer cards to quickly identify the different statuses. When services are provided, the specialist keeps the customer caseload updated with time and frequency of care information. If the customer's SOC5 status changes at any time, this too is tracked in the caseload. When a session occurs, the specialist completes a customer session intake form to document the date of service, type of services utilized, and the customer's goals. Session information is entered once per session and never modified. The customer caseload, however, is updated frequently throughout their life cycle of care. Customer caseload metrics are located on the referral dashboard within the section Customer Information when services provided. Session metrics are located within two dashboards. The Sessions by Referral dashboard provides insight on the unique services each referral receiving care has received. In contrast, the Sessions dashboard provides a view of the total sessions KPFC has provided to all referrals over time.
And I know you guys are probably like, that looks incredibly complicated. However, I do just want to point out, it did start with one single referral form. So even though it looks very complicated at this point, it just takes one step to start creating something like this. So don't let it be formidable or anything like that. And then, so that was the specialist assigned and services provided. And now we're going to go over customer discharge. So pretty much that was the beginning of the episode of care for our customer. And then they're going to be contacted by their peer support specialist and they begin to receive their services. And then the next video is going to demonstrate their discharge in the system.
A customer is discharged for a variety of reasons, and this process is managed by the specialist in the customer caseload. To discharge a customer, a specialist updates the customer card with the termination date, reason for discharge, and changes the customer status to terminated. Terminated customer cards are colored black, indicating the customer is no longer active. Terminated customers are reviewed by KPFC staff before they are removed from the caseload. KPFC staff accesses this information from the management dashboard and works with a peer support specialist to ensure all discharge information is complete. If no changes are needed, checking the archive box will remove the customer from the caseload.
All right, and that pretty much sums up our demonstrations. And as you can see, it's a very fun interactive system that was created. I think it's fun. That was created with KPFC, and we made sure that KPFC was involved every way, because if we made functions that didn't make sense to Barb, what would be the point? And really important to mention that although technology is super important for organization and clean data, without the people, it would be nowhere. So I just want a huge shout out for KPFC peer support specialist and helping us create this, as well as helping collect the data. They're the ones who make the data for us. We just make sure it's proper. So that was pretty much it for solution development. So let's take a look at data-informed decisions with Jon-Michael. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. So now that you all have seen the procedures necessary to develop a successful peer support management system and a brief overview of the system that has been created for KPFC, we can begin to talk about some of the ways this new system can benefit your organization through the utilization of data-informed decisions. When dealing with a unique network like peer support, the value of intuition and lived experience are unmeasurable factors that help our peer support specialists serve their customers. However, by adding robust data tracking and analysis to the equation, peer support services can be amplified even further. To help demonstrate the power and importance of data coupled with intuition in decision-making, I would like to share some scenarios with you where data helped to solidify, dispel, or enhance previously held ideas. Consider this. Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world, and their analytics department is their fastest growing industry. According to techtarget.com, over the last 5 years, the number of data scientists at Amazon has grown 505%, and this trend is expected to continue. These specialists do everything from area mapping to improve delivery efficiency to data mining that drives their sales team and somehow always seems to know what you've been looking at. This pivot to a data-centered model came after a flagship team began using purchasing patterns and machine learning to suggest products to customers. The team believed in the predictability of human beings and had a hunch that they could use targeted ads to increase sales. This hunch was confirmed by the data when an article from Harvard Business School noted that in 2017, an estimated 35% of Amazon's customers' purchases could be tied back to the company's recommendation system. Another scenario a bit more relevant to our work came during our partnership with KPFC. Prior to the establishment of this new system, it was thought by many that customers who receive peer support in rural areas would not be able to receive or benefit from virtual peer support. However, as we will touch on later, this notion was quickly dispelled by new data that we were able to collect and analyze using the updated system. This data said, in fact, over 98% of all customers who have been served were capable of receiving virtual services, and 92% of services that have been completed to date were conducted virtually. Finally, with the holiday season among us, I thought it was only fitting to include an anecdote about the seasons. So while enjoying the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade last Thursday, I began to wonder how intuition and data played a role into its creation and growth. After some research, I found that this annual tradition began back in 1924 as a marketing ploy to draw in shoppers for the upcoming holidays. At the time, parades were very popular, and in fact, 2 other Thanksgiving Day parades in Detroit and Philadelphia launched before Macy's iconic display. The intuition to hold a live event that drew in customers was what sparked the lineage, but the sales data that has shown spiked fourth quarter profits every year since the event began is what truly solidified this decision and pushed the growth of Macy's Parade. Today, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is the largest parade in the world, attracting more than 50 million viewers, costing more than $10 million annually, and requiring over 8,000 production workers. Through these stories, I hope you all can see that intuition and lived experience alone are not enough to confirm a claim. Although these aspects can spur new innovation and ideals, continued data analysis is required to create tangible evidence that quantifies and verifies a conclusion. If you still aren't sold on the importance of using data in your decision-making, I would like to share a few more reasons why data-informed decisions are a pivotal part of enhancing your peer support system. When you begin to incorporate data-informed decisions, you start to create a culture of transparency and accountability within your organization. Since every transaction is documented with a slew of supporting information, it becomes very easy to pinpoint specifics as well as generating a sense of ownership at every level. Along these same lines, streamlining your data collection process will help to greatly improve work efficiency, allowing peer support specialists more time to help their customers succeed. Continued quality improvement and alignment with grant goals is also a benchmark for any grant-funded project, and constant scrutiny of the data can help to support these objectives. Finally, none of this would be possible without state and federal government funding. However, without clean data analysis that drives dashboard analytics, reports, and tracks target metrics, these entities would not be able to receive the necessary evidence to justify their spending. After seeing the value of including data analysis in any decision-making process, we will now take a look at the proper way to go about doing so. The graphic you see on this slide shows the 6 A's of decision-making using data: ask, acquire, analyze, apply, announce, and assess. You should also note that these procedures are represented in a circle to indicate that data-driven decision-making should be cyclical and continuous. This process may sound fairly straightforward, but requires a certain level of systematic thinking to execute. When asking your questions, you need to convert them from standard business practice questions into something that you can answer using analytics. For example, in our system, the question was asked, what services require the most additional attention? However, when we converted this into an analytical question, we realized that to fully answer the overarching question, a wide range of smaller questions needed to be targeted, like what services have the highest frequency of customers, which peer support specialists have availability based on their service type expertise, and what services received the largest amount of negative feedback from customers. Once you have established your questions, you can begin compiling relevant data to review. Continuing the previous example, in order to properly answer the questions analytically, metrics like peer support specialist caseload, service type frequency, service utilization frequencies, average time spent on various service offerings, and service efficacy information need to be acquired and analyzed. Acquisition and analysis of these metrics combined with your personal experience and intuition will give evidence-based insight into the correct course of action to take for addressing the question, what services require the most additional attention? Then all that is left is to apply the proper changes, announce them to necessary stakeholders, and begin assessing or reviewing the impacts to ensure the correct decisions were made. If you have followed the steps outlined for design thinking, vision planning, and developing your system, this process should be straightforward and easy to facilitate. As with anything, data-informed decision-making also comes with its share of limitations. However, again, if you follow the steps Max has outlined during the planning phase of system creation and are aware of these possible data traps, you will be able to mitigate their effects. The first trap you should be aware of is data record bias. This is the idea that during data collection, outside factors and preconceived notions might affect how or what is recorded. In our model, peer support is in a particularly vulnerable position for this trap, as those who are recording the data are peer support specialists who work every day with their customers. Because of this, it is very easy to make inferences about particular customers and reflect that in the data. I urge anyone who is collecting data to avoid this impulse since it can greatly skew that data. Another limitation of data analysis is that you are subservient to only the data available. This is particularly dangerous when there is a low quality of data or missing data because it only gives you a particular or a partial picture of the whole. However, if you make a point to collect full records in your new or existing system, this shouldn't be an issue. I would also caution that the data does not always show you the outcomes you are looking for, but if you have methodically constructed and tested your system, it is an unbiased reflection of current outcomes, and the contrasting information can be used to change those problem areas. Lastly, With anything new, there is always a learning curve. Since the model we have laid out empowers peer support partners to collect and analyze data by folks who may not have much experience with the subject, this is especially important to consider as you create your new workflow system. Later on in the presentation, we will highlight some steps that we have taken to support these new skills. Now that you have seen the power of data-informed decision-making, it is time to begin constructing your system and developing data pathways for internal and external data sharing. To help get you started, I wanted to outline the current tools used by our partner KPFC in their peer support management system to disseminate data. As Max mentioned, dashboards are integrated into the system and used both internally and externally to show real-time data tracking. Annual and quarterly reports are used to show supporting data to KPFC and present progress on focused populations and areas to various funding government agencies. The referral submission process is also now streamlined to better support reporting on referral regions and demographics. This can help better determine what populations have the most need. Although these are the tools we have chosen to use, you may need to tweak the list a bit to help better support funding requirements or align with your reporting needs. Finally, to round out this discussion, our partner from KPFC, Barb, will share with you all some of the data information she has been able to glean from the new system and some of the changes and decisions made as a result of this new information. And I will pass it to Barb to talk with us a bit about some use cases.
Sorry, I'm never going to be really good at knowing when to be on mute and when not to. So one of the most powerful tools for me as a manager of peer support was when the cards were developed, there was a comment function with them. And this, as you can see, just based on this one, it allowed me to communicate with each specialist per individual customer. And that really allowed for coaching and celebrations and resources to happen. And but we did a lot of conversations like you might do in any agency where you do case planning and so on and so forth, and staff sits together and they share cases, and they get the shared intuition from the rest of their team. But we couldn't do that. We have far too many to do, so we might do a couple. But this tool really allows us to look at each customer's needs in their journey from referral to termination, and to have ongoing communication between myself as the coach and supervisor to the peer support specialist. And it has been absolutely fantastic. And, you know, at some point, I hope you know who they are, and you should really engage them in some conversations around how this tool has worked for them. So that's really allowed us to track things. And it's also given us a way to kind of not just look at the needs, but also to celebrate some of the successes and breakthroughs that the customers have had along the way. So one of the things that in managing the services, something came up. And I guess when we started this adventure, we assumed that this would never happen. You know how you make those assumptions and then all of a sudden you're just there. We were at a place where we were toward the ceiling in capacity in terms of who we could provide services for. So the little graph on the right of the screen really it caused us to go back and to create a new tool, a new cool tool that really helped us formulate a sort of a waiting list. So we didn't lose any of the customers while we were trying to gather information about who could support when. And so that was one of the things, and we've been talking about that through our whole presentation, that we were building it while we flew it. And so this is one of the things that we utilized. And also it caused us, it helped us understand that, you know, there were more youth seeking services, or there were more referrals for youth than we had imagined that there would be. And so it really called us to look at our staffing patterns and how many youth we needed to employ. So thank you for that. So in many cases, one of the things we found, and you may have already known this, it was a new learning for me and for us, is that when referrals are made, they're really asking for support for more than just one individual. So for the parent, maybe for mom and dad, maybe for mom, dad, and the youth, maybe for grandmother who's caring for the children. And so it gives us a new riddle on how to really meet the needs. And this particular graph really kind of shows, it's fictional, but it depicts, you can easily see like how many really needed family support, how many youth support, how many actually really needed adult support that didn't meet in that category, but was in the context of the family. So that it helped us really make some informed decisions about how we tweaked our program to meet the needs. Again, as I think Jon-Michael said it earlier, is one of our big ahas was that 97% of the customers that were referred to us had the ability to use virtual support. We would never have thought that. And I know Kentucky's done a lot of good work in trying to make internet more possible and feasible for areas that really couldn't do that before. But this is testimony. We obviously did a good job somewhere, because 97% of our customers could do that. So, and then 86% of our customers actually attended these remote sessions, and the others really attended the in-person. But you can see the difference. It also has a big impact on cost effectiveness of peer support and how it can be provided. And you all, any of you who provide services, know that sometimes, especially in rural areas, it takes 2 hours to travel to a person to do a face-to-face service. And so if you don't have to sacrifice quality of service, but can do it virtually, it maximizes our capacity to provide services. So this allowed us to kind of see that. It also, we kind of were able to track what was the most sought out services. And as this bar, and it's kind of similar, I mean, you can see that far more of the folks that we worked with really wanted that one-on-one peer support. But some of them also needed like the nurturing parenting program. And very quickly we could see how many of them started and where people started falling off as they started falling out of the sessions, and allowed us to tweak or figure out ways to kind of keep people motivated to keep coming, or discover at least why people were dropping services. And then of course, resource needs was a lot of families needed resource needs. And this is no surprise to you all. I know you all are very familiar. The other thing we noticed is that Smart Recovery, which is one of the support groups that we have been trying to really kind of get going over the last few years, was starting to pick up and become much more popular. And so it told us that we were finally at a place where we had the right things in place to attract folks to come to those sessions that hadn't been coming to them before. So that kind of, so this just in a quick glance could tell us, we could look at that and go, okay, so here's our strong places. Here's places, here are the curious, need to know why this is happening. So, and it has allowed us to ongoingly kind of tweak our project. One of the things that we also felt was really important to do was to really develop a way to hear from the customers themselves. about the services that they were receiving and the people who were referring those customers. And so what you're seeing right now is just a kind of a snippet of what we have collected through those satisfaction surveys. And, we say with very much pride, one of the biggest things that we see on this page is the word helped, which kind of gives us, puts us in our feels and kind of gives us the understanding that what we're doing is making sense and is really helping people. So kind of a good reason to get up and keep doing it every day. The other thing it really talked about, this was with our, we done a provider satisfaction survey also, because it was critical that our provider partners could see the benefit of peer support where it should be validated. And so some of the things we collected was like, were they courteous? Were the peer support staff courteous? A huge one is like, did they help people achieve their goals? And that you can see by this, that was like a strongly agreed, which told us again, you're on the right track. So those were two things we were looking at that kind of give us, some bragging rights, but even more important than that, kind of showed us where our strengths were and where we need to maybe develop a little better.
Thanks so much for that, Barb. Yeah, you can really tell how easy it is for you to interpret this data now. And I don't know if you would have felt that way before we started this process, but yeah, you did a phenomenal job of running through that.
Absolutely not.
So to better help support your creation of a new system, we thought it would also be valuable for everyone to see some of the ways we were able to tackle both seen and unseen obstacles that were faced during the creation of our system. Obstacles are expected in any new development and require a certain level of flexibility to diminish. The first set of obstacles we will describe are ones that we have termed known unknowns. Known unknowns are those expected barriers that your team identifies from the start. They are obstacles that you plan for and should include in your design thinking. Barb and I will now talk through some of these known unknowns that we expected and how we have addressed them. Barb, if you want to go ahead and get started, we're going to start off with referral source engagement.
Yes. So one of the it was a kind of an unknown, and that was that it was very difficult to get supporting information so that very quickly a referral could come, it could get assigned, and whatever specialist was assigned to them could look at where they were in their journey and could actually engage with them more quickly in how to fulfill whatever plans that they were already that they were already a part of. Before that, we kind of we went back and forth trying to get a hold of plans, which took time, which kind of, made delayed services, if you will. But we knew this was going to be a problem. And one of the things that we were able to do through this new referral link was to allow them to kind of upload the supporting information that really gave the peer support specialist a bigger picture of where this customer was and how they could really assist them. So that was one of the big known unknowns that we came across.
And that referral source, that new referral form, I think, has been a hit with customers and with your peer support specialists. So really glad to be able to add that piece. Project alignment is also something we have touched on several times in this presentation because it's so important. Open communication between all partners is pivotal for creating a system that fulfills the needs it is set out to do. In order to ensure project alignment for our system, weekly project meetings were scheduled to discuss progress and goals, and supplemental meetings were added as needed for various support and training opportunities. Throughout the entire process, design thinking was present as we constantly referred back to that why that Jessica had described at the beginning for creating the system. And our consistent meetings allowed for adaptations, clarification, and communication to continuously flow freely between partners. Next up, Barb is going to talk with us a bit about some of the data gaps we experienced when converting the KPFC system from the old system into this new Smartsheet system.
So in the old data collection strategy, we had a lot of when referrals were done, there was a lot of missing information, if you will. And a lot of that, you know, as you can see, this is kind of a sample, but there's a significant amount of unknowns here. And for clean data collection, we really needed to clear up those unknowns more. And so that the new referral form that actually asked specifically for those pieces of data really helped with that. Also, we were really trying to collect demographics on race and ethnicity. And as you can see, and this is kind of representative of where we were, that there was too many unknowns even in that. So it was very difficult for us to put our finger on who is this population that we're serving, and so what are the trends and patterns. But once we were allowed to collect it in this way, we really began to look at things and make changes according to what the needs were.
I can attest to that. It's just from the data side of things, it's much easier to work with that full data set. And it's just some things that we've touched on when you are beginning to implement your system. In that design thinking, just really thinking through all pieces that you need to record and that you would like to look at, and kind of looking at those existential factors and seeing what can help you answer the questions that you're looking to answer.
Right.
Getting into licensing limitations now, another known unknown that we had planned for. These are always something that to consider when you are creating a new system. Max had mentioned we went with Smartsheet because that's what KPFC had, and it meshed well with HDI's expertise, and so we were able to convert that system very easily. But in order to create a universal tool for everyone, you must work with your partners to tease out the platform that has the most to offer for your needs. It should be affordable and accessible for everyone, user-friendly, and ideally multiple people within the collective teams would be familiar with building in the application. As we consider this barrier when creating our system, again, like I mentioned, we talked through and realized that Smartsheet would be the best fit for all partners, since it was something that KPFC had used, and HDI had several team members with ample experience. And also to note, licensing, this licensing issue will also undoubtedly affect the size your system can grow to. So it's important to consider capacity of the application you are using as well. This is a concept known as scalability, and another limitation to remember during your build. A successfully scalable system is one that can respond or adapt to quick changes in workload and customer demand. The tool that we developed for KPFC was built with inherent flexibility that allows for quick changes to help with expansion of both functionality and customer growth. Some of these features were highlighted earlier in the presentation, such as large-scale data validation formulas and that creation of a wait list. Now I'm going to pass it back to Barb so she can discuss the staff reporting training that was offered.
Thank you. Thank you. So one of the things that became very clear to me is that while I could use this and I understood this, I was in no way was I able to train all of our specialists in how to use their dashboard with integrity. And so part of our partnership actually was to have a couple of training meetings during our weekly, and we decided early in the game that we would be meeting weekly because we had a lot of work to do and we wanted to do it right. But HDI, specifically it was Michelle, I think, who made herself available for trainings for the peer support center staff, and also had a week of an open clinic where they could just hit on her during certain hours of the day and say, okay, I'm struggling with this. Help me remember, how was I supposed to do this? And they actually learned very quickly and become quite adept at using the system in a very short time because of that. So that was one of the benefits of the partnership that we had. So the other thing is that we are called upon to do some reports, and we would like to do some reports based on on the data that we've collected and the work that we've done. This snapshot right here really is looking at a comparison between 2 years, and part of it we were looking at where are the referrals coming from on any given month of these 2 years. You can see we're still in November down here, I think. No, it went to August. But it kind of gives you, and we were able to look at this and go, hey, what's up with May? Of all the months in the year, May seems to be the highest. Referrals are done in May. Wonder what's happening in May. So it began to, we could ask our partners some questions about, why they thought referrals were up during that. It also let us compare region for region where our referrals were coming from. And so we went in the beginning of, like 50% or better of the referrals were really coming from one region. And that was a region that we had a longstanding relationship and partnership with. But as we grew the program, and as we grew our partnerships and our relationships, you can see that in the 2022, that has changed. And so it tells us that we're growing in our partnerships. Not that we don't have some ways to go, but we are actually growing in our partnerships. And I think our last quarterly report, and I just got to say it, sorry. In our last quarterly report, we felt really good because it looked like we had received more referrals from the population, that the specific population we really hope to serve during that last quarter than ever before, which said something was going well. So we got to figure out what that is and continue to grow that. But that was a very empowering discovery for us.
That's awesome. I love hearing that empowerment and that taking ownership of data. I think it really is an important piece for maintaining that sustainability moving forward. So as I had mentioned earlier, while discussing data-informed decisions, whenever a new data system is created, there's always a bit of a learning curve, no matter what the user's experience is with data or the system, anything new, it requires a bit of time to acclimate. And this is yet another one of the known unknowns that we kept in mind during system development. To combat this barrier, once all past data was entered into our new system and functionality tests had been ran, a copy of this system with all of its associated parts was created offline to serve as a training model. To further support training, our Smartsheet expert, Michelle, scheduled internal meetings with KPFC to show peer support specialists how to use the new system, and offered open office hours to allow for ample communication during the transition. That communication, again, is so important between partners for this project or any. Anyone with questions was welcome as they acclimated to the new system. And additionally, as you can see on the slide, the model was also created with a user-friendly interface that enabled trainees to learn as they worked and made it easy for new members to easily assimilate to the workflow. In addition to establishing that safe place for peer support specialists to freely learn the new procedures, this training model also served as a basis for creating yet another copy of the system that functions as a test site for new innovations, and the test site functions for new innovations in the system that have been proposed. It's an area that we can go to whenever we have updates or changes that we want to make to the system, and we can really work in that without it being live, and use it to take the different avenues and see what works best, and really really focus back again on that design thinking, that continuous design thinking. Having a specific design test system can be extremely beneficial once you take your new system live. It allows you to test new techniques and innovations and work out any bugs that may come up. These new bugs are the second type of obstacle that we will face as you create your new network for peer support services. And we have coined these unknown unknowns. Unknown unknowns are those barriers that come up after your structure is in place. They are unforeseen obstacles that are only made visible once the system is up and running. To continue this conversation, I'll pass it again back to Barb so that she can explain some of those unknown unknowns that we had experienced since the system development and how they were addressed.
A lot of the unknowns really had, I mean, we didn't know. So there were things that we didn't know until we put this in play in terms of collecting this data. There were things we didn't know. One example of that was we didn't really have a good way of collecting or understanding who was really designated as System of Care 5, as opposed to someone who was not System of Care 5. And there were a lot of things back and forth that we went through to try to discover that, okay, so this is not clean data. We need to figure this out a little more. And so that was one of the unknowns, and we tweaked the system. And so it really allowed for, I think we went over earlier in the presentation, it really allowed for our specialists to change the status of customers as the status changed. And so we had a real-time reflection of who was in that population and who was not in that population. So that was one of the things. The other thing, the data has really kind of, we look at that data on a monthly basis. We, the team, myself and the peer support specialist, and glean from that data how we need to tweak things. So it's been about, having that has really driven a lot of the decisions that we've made over time to our program. But one of the other things that I guess I should have foreseen, but I didn't foresee, was that this whole notion about human error and how I could really mess something up by clicking the wrong thing, which, of course I could do. I think other people could probably do that. And that was really, that was an unknown. And then, but once those things started happening, then we went back into the system and we created these fail safes that, so if I had entered something, or if a peer support specialist had entered something that was inaccurate or wasn't true to what we were true to what we were trying to collect, it would present a red flag. So we could go back and we could fix it, and we could make sure that what we were presenting was really accurate. And that was a godsend. I think I had a conversation with Michelle, I don't know, a month ago, and she was like, girl, I can see that when this, when you get these red words show up, you go back and immediately, and you're able to fix it. And that's really cool. And I said, yes, that is really cool, because I would have never have thought about that before. And it makes a total difference in how we represent the truth about what's going on with our project. So those are a couple of the unknown unknowns that I can think of. However, if you all want to talk, anybody wants to talk about some of the other unknowns or some of the other things, the learnings as we have made this journey, I know I and my partners here would be up for talking to you about that. So more to come if you would like to hear it.
Definitely. Another thing to add on with those SOC, the system of care, population of focus, was I believe the reason why they were changing. I know with data it's very easy, and sometimes the data can create more questions than it answers, and so being able to recognize that and adapt and implement new changes in order to address those. It really speaks to the flexibility of the system, to the flexibility of your team, to the flexibility of everything that's trying to be accomplished. So, and so finally, partnership is a key component of the SOC 5 grant, as you all know. As it is only through working with like-minded partners that we can create a fully comprehensive system to successfully meet the needs of the people we serve. Partnership is what has made this new system possible. Barb, would you like to express how this partnership has positively affected your work at KPFC and how it opened the doors for new partnership opportunities in the future?
Absolutely. So one of the things that this partnership kind of afforded us at KPFC was, one, to really look at, and you saw it before, what we wanted to accomplish and what all the pieces were. And we had sort of like visions, and I would say empathetic partners who understood our passion and understood what we were really trying to do, and made significant efforts so that we could collect what we needed to collect, and not just, just this number, but, differences, outcomes, and things that it was making, a way to really look at trends in the kind of goals that people had, and the rationale for referrals that were being done, and which has been very enlightening for us. And then we had an existing partnership with one agency, and it was a long-standing partnership that we had. And in that partnership, we were able to they were able to help support the KPFC project in a small way, in terms of, subsidizing some of the staff salary and giving them a place to sit and meet. And since then, and that relationship grew as a result of this project. And so one of the things that we discovered is that there are other partners out there that we need to be in contact. We developed partnerships with tons of DCDS workers across the state who were making these referrals. So we gained many partners through that. We gained REACT partners. We gained System of Care 5 staff as partners. And one of the things that we discovered through that is that, lo and behold, that we had the capacity to not just serve all these people all by ourselves and be the be-all, end-all, but also to figure out how to partner with other agencies who were providing services. So how to help these families and these youth get enrolled in other services that were available where they lived, and figuring out our referrals expanded and exploded. Suddenly we were getting them from the hospital, from CDWs, from folks we had never dreamed that they would really come from, behavioral health agencies, and gosh, I can't even think of all of them off the top of my head, but there was this whole new world of potential partnerships that we could have out there. Thank you, Lee. She's putting all my acronyms into the chat. Sorry. So it was kind of a discovery process for us about potential partners, not just existing partners, and not just partners that you have to have, but partners that you desire to have. And it helped us kind of build that in some ways, which has been wonderful. And we've had other agencies kind of seek us out and say, hey, how can we partner with you all with this? So in some cases, if it makes more sense, if an agency has a peer support team that they are employing, and some of the people we are actually working with live in their area and are, want services from them, we have actually passed transferred peer support services over to other agencies who are had the capacity to do them. So it's just unlocked a multitude of opportunities to really look at partnership. And when we thought this was just a partnership between System of Care 5 on our state level, System of Care 5 and HDI and KPFC, and all of a sudden there's this explosion of potential partners, which speaks a lot to our journey for sustainability. So that was just, that was very enlightening.
Thanks, Barb. We've covered a lot of information today. The journey that everyone will take to create their data solution or their solution to amplify their work will be very different. But the concepts that we share today can be applied in a lot of different ways across your agency. Some tips would be to use existing infrastructure and tools. So we chose Smartsheets because it was already being used by KPFC in other ways. You can also apply design thinking using that person-centered iterative process. And of course, trust the process. Good things take time and no one gets it right on the first go. And the last tip here is to build partnerships. The best ideas start out as conversations. So don't be afraid to reach out and learn more about what others are doing and to explore those new connections for your agency, as Barb was just talking about. And that concludes our presentation for today. We'd be happy to answer any questions from the Q&A or the chat that came in.
One last time, if you have any questions, enter them in the chat. We do have in the Q&A, please. We do have one question in the chat. With the data on efficacy of telehealth for peer services, is there any talk at the state level to allow for telehealth past COVID allowances?
I just want to say that this is kind of like new information that's coming out that we're presenting. We haven't really talked about that a lot. And certainly I think there's probably room, and we hope that a lot of conversations are going to come out of some of the things that we talked about today. So we don't know, but certainly there is enough fodder for thought to have some conversations about that, I think. And Beth Jordan is saying, yes, there is. So
if she's able to find it quickly, we can put it in the chat box. If not, feel free to email me and I can help get you that information. I'll put my email address in the chat in just a moment. Quick reminder, because I know some people are going to start hopping off, you need to stay for the question and answer portion because that counts as the content. During the first 2 weeks of December is when you will get an email from me with the link to your evaluation to proceed to your certificate. I had a question in the chat about that. Just for a quick reminder about that. Keep entering questions if you have them. And I have a question. So you guys talk a lot about partnerships and how awesome this was. What's somebody's first step, like ground zero? What's the first thing that they could do? How did it come about?
Well, I'm just going to answer for KPFC and say we had an opportunity through the System of Care 5 grant that we were able to participate in with the state, and it allowed some monies because we had some previous conversations about the need our need to feel like we could collect more data and demonstrate the efficacy of peer support for 1,000 different reasons. And so we had that support, and they had already been contracting with UK HDI. And so they were able to kind of turn us on to them and say, you have some conversations with them and see if, you know, what they think, how they might be able to help you with that. And that, so knowing somebody that knows how to do it, you know, and I think you just have to ask around to see where, you know, where that is. I was not part of the purse strings and any of that, so I don't even know how much money. But whatever it was worth it, because it was just, it was a very amazing, empowering journey for folks with lived experience, providing services to other folks. And two, it is an awesome model for how you can do peer support at a lower cost. So that's my answer. You all may have a different one. Holler at you, maybe.
I was gonna make the comment about just that communication. You know, System of Care 5 is, you know, a collaboration of a bunch of different organizations and partners, and I think that they're all geared towards the same goals. And so I think, yeah, if there's an idea, don't be afraid to bring it up. You know, in any scenario, you may be in a meeting with 10 people and you may not know 5 of them. And if you start talking about it, then all of a sudden, you know, that open line of communication starts. And I think that's the best step right there, is to really just kind of express the need.
Yeah. You could always, you know, you could contact Beth or Tina or Dee Dee or somebody up the state if you have some notions about it, to see, you know, what those kinds of agreements might look like, and so on and so forth. So that's let me just put them out there. You could always contact them and say, how did this work for KPFC, and can you give us some ideas about how we could approach something like that? Sorry, guys.
I was muted. Beth is now a co-host so that she can drop that link in the chat box for anyone that wants it.
Thank you.
I know she's a lifesaver. Someone asked in the chat, I think I missed something on the background of the smart sheets. Is this a system organizations can adopt? You want to talk about smart sheet?
Smart sheet is a system that anybody, individual or organization, can really utilize. KPFC already utilized smart sheet. We had a lower end licensure because that is all we needed. One of the things I think that Jon-Michael alluded to is sometimes you have to look at, you may have to tweak your tools. With smart sheet, we had to go up a level to the business level, which was still really affordable, but allowed us to build a much better system. But anybody, you can go on the smart sheet, and they have great tutorials on YouTube. It's amazing what you, and we were already using this for some of our other projects and stuff. We just never thought about it being a whole workforce management system.
And I just want to point out, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that it's not necessarily for management. It's usually for like assigning tasks and project progress. So the way we utilize it was really just kind of out of the box for KPFC. Like, just because you think a system can be used for one thing doesn't always necessarily prove to do so. Our Smartsheet master, Michelle Ellington, really took the beast by the horns and made it do honestly impossible things. But it is an amazing system.
Yeah.
I dropped the link in the chat if anybody wants to go and research Smartsheet. And Dee Dee said that she may have missed it. Can you tell us some data you received that was not expected?
Yes, I can. One of the things that was not expected is we didn't expect that as many dads really were open or desired necessarily peer support. But in looking at our data, what we discovered was many dads are very interested in providing peer support and participating in their family a little bit differently than they have been stereotyped. And so that was a significant learning for us. So that was huge. The whole thing about people really desiring virtual services, that was huge, I think. And I can only speak for myself and what I knew. And I guess I had previously thought that a lot of families probably did not necessarily enjoy that service that way or whatever. I think one of the things that COVID did is it really opened our eyes to there are tons of ways to really, work with families, and this virtual world really afforded us an opportunity to kind of get a glimpse into something like that. And that showed up in our data. So that's two things specifically, Dee Dee, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about all these other discoveries that we made.
On automating the system to recognize errors on referrals, how is the system able to recognize certain things as errors? Like, what's an example of info that would get flagged in red as a likely error?
So one of the most common ones for me in learning the system was duplications. And so it might be that I had duplicated all of the information, but we had two different ID numbers on the same family. Let's say a couple different people made a referral. That would be flagged, and I would go back and I could see where they were and make the adjustments that I needed, so that we were looking at a real referral and not a duplicate referral. So anything that read, so it could be that, it could be that simple. It could be that we forgot to input some data that we were required to input or we needed to input, and that would show up that was missing. And that was also really helpful, but it was like bright red. And so I knew immediately when I opened up my dashboard, it was this big red thing glaring at me and says, you need to fix this. You need to go back and redo this. And that was awesome to be able to catch that, because I'm human, I might not have ever caught some of those things that this system was allowed. And that was done, I'm going to say it looked like it was fairly easy. I don't know. It must be big, could have been very painful for Michelle to fix that, but it seemed like, she made a huge difference in our ability to manage it with integrity.
And that a large part of that, I'll add to that, Barb, is that it helped us to be able to track these customers over time, right? Like the outcomes that you see over time or something that's a big metric that's looked at in SOC through that full episode of care, and being able to make sure that data is accurate is vital to make sure that happens. I did see in the chat that someone had mentioned about wrong birthdays. And just because of the way that the system is set up, it's a great question. It really is. And because the way the system is set up, where we don't have any personally identifiable information for these individuals, there's no way for us to verify that that's their correct birthday. So we kind of just have to take the information as given for things like that. But as far as system validation based off of data that's available and already within the system, I think is really where that error tracking came into play.
Yeah, there are a lot of little places, like someone could have clicked the wrong thing, and if there wasn't a way to filter through that was a wrong thing, then it would not show up necessarily.
I will add, though, if you are planning on making your new system, the best way that we have found to decrease human error is to you want to be able to give them options, write-in options and things like that. But as far as drop down menus, multiple choice, things that are concrete answers that don't have to be manually input are typically the best data that we can get and analyze.
Is the outcome data that you collect mostly about referral status, follow through, and other demographic, or did you have a measure of intervention efficacy specifically?
So we don't have it as a part of this system yet. It's something that we are working on. Like we've said, it's something that is continuously growing, continuously moving, but there are two separate surveys that we've worked with KPFC to develop and implement for the family efficacy scale and the youth efficacy scale. And these are the things that we're working to try to integrate in the system somehow, or to help to make it easier to streamline those processes and connect them in a way. And so that's honestly the next thing on the docket.
And it's a little bit, I was just trying to think, how do we do that kind of currently? How do we glean any of that? And one of the, we track it in several different ways. So part of it would be on the goals of the within the services that get described in the services that's being provided to a family. And part of it is in the discharge summary and rationale for discharge and whether or not families were able to complete their goals. Some of it shows up in the cards when we're discussing, and they may be saying, John Doe has graduated parenting class and has reported his kids would be returning, in 30 days or whatever at next court date or whatever. So there are separate different indicators, but we don't have one place we can go to for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was going to say one thing that we can see is if they do change SOC5 status, if that change is positive, if they're not DCBS involved and their case is closed. And
we can look at it in so many different ways. It's really kind of cool to look at all the different ways you can examine all of the information.
So anyone not familiar with the System of Care 5 grant that they're referencing, if you want more information about that, I'm going to drop our project director's email in the chat box, and she has flyers that she can share if you want more information and to know about the regions that they're talking about. Any other questions? Be sure to use the Q&A, or you can drop them in the chat. Any final thoughts from our presenters? Anything that you forgot? Oh, one more question. How is the jump made from identifying the points in time or number of sessions after which clients started falling off from participating in services and figuring out any actual reasons behind why it occurred at that point in time? Do you need me to reread that?
I can speak a little bit to it. And I think maybe Jon-Michael, I don't know if you can or not, but what I can say for me in my role with the project, I can look at that to see where sessions are falling off. I have access to the ID numbers and to the customer cards, and even to the terminations are archived. They don't go out into cyberspace. They're actually archived in case we should need to glean something from past customers' information. And so there are different ways we can look at that to see. I will, and then of course we talk about it in our weekly meetings. But one of the things, both in the FES family empowerment survey and the youth empowerment survey, in the customer and partner satisfaction surveys, we are able to see whether or not people feel like they are actually meeting their outcomes, whether their clients are, whether peer support has enabled them to meet the outcomes that were outlined for them. So there are some different ways that we can look at it that kind of affords us some glimpses. one of our biggest learnings is that, I guess, and I think this is probably across the board and maybe for services period, I don't know, but for us for sure, is that the initial engagement piece seems to be the biggest hurdle. And actually, you know, being able to make actual contact with folks, build that rapport and that relationship, that when then we can provide ongoing services. And I don't know that we're the only ones that really, you know, struggle with that, but that has been a barrier. And so we're trying to look at different ways that maybe we can figure out to kind of help that process go along. One of the things that we were able to do just by virtue of tweaking our system and the referral process was we were it allowed us to get people assigned quicker and to get people to begin contacting people quicker. Our new process also allowed us to have some ongoing contact with the referral source for assistance in contacting people if we need to. What we have found, many of our referrals have come from DCDS, and we have found that many people who receive services, not just from DCDS, receive services in particular, many people might have a temporary phone, or their phone number may change fairly quickly. Or they may have service right now, and then they may be going to have service, you know, in a few days. So there are a lot of contributing factors to that. So, you know, we understand that, and that's one of the things we're working on, but we feel like we made real progress in this transportation piece.
Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of speak on what Barb was mentioning, yeah, the metadata and which is kind of that system information that lets you know kind of when that came in, when changes were made, things like that can only really take you so far. And that's really where that pairing of the lived experiences and, you know, that real world situational data with the you know, the qualitative data pairs together, and you have to use that. You know, the data kind of like I'd mentioned before, the data sometimes creates more questions, and
Right.
sometimes the data can't answer those questions, and that happens more. And to alleviate that, you just kind of need to open up that line of communication. You know, that's that frequent meetings, you know, to kind of just discuss and look at, you know, what's going on, talk to them, you know. And then also there are a lot of the comment section, I think now, from peer support specialists is something that you can use to kind of glean a lot of that information and see kind of what happened to that person, or is it a no contact, they just not want to talk today, you know, things like that. You can really kind of get
Right.
into it. And it's interesting because I know, I feel like I know about, you know, these people without knowing them or knowing who they are, just because of, you know, kind of filing through the data. So I think that was an important piece that I know Barb wanted to add to the system, and I think that it adds a tremendous amount of value.
Any final thoughts from you guys, or any points of advice?
I guess I just want to say a big shout out to the peer support specialists and Barb, because without the people, without the passion, none of this would have been possible. After all, we were just creating data solutions to amplify, not to replace. So it's been a great honor to work with Barb and her peer support specialists to help them do this work. Sometimes, you know, data analysts were like the grunts and we never see the people, but through Barb, we're able to kind of like see the changes that are being created. It's awesome.
Thank you. And it's been a, you know, it's like I said before, this has been a very empowering experience for those of us who with lived experience, not just me, but, you know, the other people who are helping interpret the data, and the peer support specialists who are providing services. It has been truly an empowering experience, and I believe has given many of us, sorry you all, a newfound respect for all these numbers that we keep hearing about, and, you know, all this data, and I've heard data driven and data informed decision making before, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. But what I was able to see through working with these folks in this project was it truly is a way to do that. And it does make sense. And you don't have to be, you know, a mathematician or an analyst or have a, you know, top-notch degree in numbers or whatever it is. I don't even know what the degree is for that, but you know, you don't have to have that to partner if you have a partner who has that. That you really can marry passion with data, and that's been very empowering.
Or that may be your next career.
I don't know, Beth or Leah. I don't know about that. But it's certainly been part of this one.
This was amazing. And I want to say thank you guys for being here today. We had a lot of kudos in the chat for you guys, and I'm sure that there will be more coming.